Who are you in this vast multiverse?
Aloha and welcome to my channel. For all you people who are new, today we're going to focus on ancient Oblivion. Those are the things that collectively our society seems to have forgotten about. Ancient truths from myths and legends, all the way to how did our alphabet begin? Have you ever wondered that? Have you ever wondered how, where do our letters come from? What do they mean? Starting in the upper right hand corner, this one is a picture of the head of a cow, or you could say an ox. Okay, we're going to actually start off with this one, but I want to read them to you first. This is Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, He, Vav, Zayin, Het, Tet, Yod, Kaf, Lamed, Mim, right there, Nun, Samek, Ayin, Pe, Tzadi, or Tzade, Qof, Rish, Sheen, Tav. Check out this picture right here. We're going to start off with the A. Originally, people would draw out the entire picture of an ox. They would, or a bull, you could say. They would draw the head. They would draw the horns. They would probably put a body there. You'll have to forgive my crude drawings. They would put some legs on there. You know what I mean? Because originally, this is how people would draw. They would draw the entire picture. It turned into what we call shorthand, right? People wanted quicker ways to draw this. The quicker way to draw this would be just to draw the actual head of the animal, right? So an animal with horns, originally, especially as with hieroglyphics and rock drawings and stuff, these things were being carved into tough surfaces so that they could last the test of time. So originally it was like that, but then people did it quicker and it went like this, and they would just do that. And then people would just go like this. They would make the face, and then they would just, boom, go just like that. It shifted. It started to turn upside down. So sometimes it would be like that, and sometimes it would be like this. The bull's head represents strength and at the same time being a leader or being first or in front of, right? It implies leadership or strength because the bull is very strong and it's full of muscles, right? So that's what the letter A actually means. A means strength. This is synonymous with the bull. But this is where the origin of the letter A comes from. This one right here is B, Beit. This is the letter for a house. Over here, you can see it looks kind of like a container, and it's sort of like a schematic, how we do schematics for housing today, and you would draw it from above looking down. As you can see, it looks almost like it's sort of a spiral, but it's not. This is the entrance, and this is the inner chamber, so this would be a house. And as you can see, they drew like a little entryway here, and then they drew the actual big room, because originally, I imagine, houses didn't have a whole lot of rooms or anything. They were like caves or, you know, stuff like that with one entryway and a main room or whatever, right? But some people drew it like this. And then it would go around, and then you would have your little room right there. So this would be the entryway, and this would be your inner chamber. Keep in mind also that people lived in tents. So the letter B by some people was drawn as, like, for example, the horizon, and then they would make a tent on the horizon. And it takes no stretch of the imagination to see that if you just turn this one sideways, it turns into a lowercase letter B, as you can see right here. Now I'm going to draw this left to right just because, you know, so people can understand it easier. But originally it would have been from right to left. A, and then the house, which is like a container. And you can draw it in different ways, right? And B, which gives us the word Ab. Or you could say Abba, which means the leader of the house, or the strength of the house, or the strong one of the house. And what this means in modern Hebrew and in Phoenician is father. It means the leader of the house, Ab or Abba, which is how children say it, right? So let's draw it from right to left. From right to left, it would be the picture of the bull's head. If I want to go quickly, I'm just going to draw these points, boom, A or Aleph, and then B, which would be like the horizon, boom, papow, and a tent. There we go. So Abba, from right to left. Abba, or the strength of the house, father. C is the equivalent to the letter G, basically. This is the letter Gimel, ga, which over time turned into pronunciation ka. What that is it's a picture of a foot. Okay, so the first one, Aleph, was a picture of an ox. This one is a picture of a house. This one is a picture of a foot. So let's go over here and we would draw out. Originally, they would draw out, right? They would try to draw like an actual foot, like a sock, you know, just like a child would draw a foot or whatever. And that's what that was, right? So this right here was a foot. This was Gimel. That turned into this right here, which turned into this right here, C. And then this one right here could mean foot, gathering, walking, and other things people do with their feet. Now, for me personally, it means and it implies a destination, which is why we see it on some of the older maps. There is a letter G right at the middle at the North Pole because it was a destination. A, B, C, D, or A, B, G, D. Remember, ka, and ga are almost the exact same sound, represented by a straight line down, if I were to draw the capital version of it, and then sort of a sideways dome. And I say it like that purposefully because I'm going to show you the original way that this was drawn. The original way that the letter D was drawn was like this. It had a ceiling with what looks like a dome light right underneath it, just like that. So a door was the letter D. So how is this a door? So the original form for the letter D was like a ceiling with this inverted dome underneath it, right? And as you can see, obviously, if you turn that sideways, it would be a lowercase letter d. But in the old world, let me draw something out for you here. In the old world, they had the land, which was flat and a plane, and then they had a firmament, or the sky, which was a physical barrier over the land, just like that. As you can see, it actually looks like the letter D. A hole breaks open in this firmament at the top of the world. The atmosphere depressurizes. Everything gets sucked out. All the air and all the atmosphere gets sucked out of the top when our atmosphere depressurizes. Hypothetically speaking, you don't have to believe it if you don't want to, but when that happens, and then the electromagnetic barrier goes back up, this actually has an invisible magnetic barrier to it as well, which would be this shape right here. So basically, all of those gases and stuff, they change into a hardened form, which is ice, and it creates a little inverted dome at the top whenever the electricity runs back through this barrier up here. If you have like a bowl magnet, it's shaped like this, right? And you put a little hole at the bottom of your little bowl magnet like that, right? It'll create a little bubble on the top, a little invisible bubble of magnetism, right? So whenever you apply more of those gases that freeze and turn into ice, you get an inverted dome at the top of our dome, right? Which would be the door to the world. The letter D is shaped like that because it is the ceiling of our world, or the firmament of the world, with a little door at the top of it. And this is the all-seeing eye, basically. This is the depressurization point of the world. We've got Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet. See that? How it was more square right there? And this follows suit in Egyptian too, in hieroglyphics and in hieratic and stuff like that. They would draw things similar to this sort of square at the top because it's hard to carve. It's hard to carve in circles and stuff like that. You get more hard angles. So we've got Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, or A, B, C, D, and then E over here. You can actually see it kind of does resemble an E already. It sort of looks like a spirit, right? It sort of looks like a ghost that's sort of hovering around and it's turned sideways. And if we go up and we follow this timeline all the way up here, we can see it actually looks more like a person with their arms up like this. But here we are with Hey, and it says a man with his arms raised, and it means to look, to reveal, or breath. This shape right here. This is originally what it was. It was a picture of like a stick figure, and their arms were up. Just like this. Now, I'm going to break this down according to my own perspective and my own cosmology. So remember how I showed you in the old world, they believed that we had a plane of existence with a firmament that went up and over, right? And then we had a door at the top or an opening at the top. Well, at the middle of the world, on ancient maps, there was said to be a mountain. Rupas Nigra. Right? It was the tallest mountain in the world, and it was pictured oftentimes on many different maps. They would put this high and lofty, what I call a plasma volcano or mountain. Whenever we go through these polarity shifts, plasma or inner earth energy reverses direction. Right now it is being pulled inwards towards the heart of the earth and charging. But when we go through an electromagnetic shift, all of that energy, all of those gases are released out into the surface where we live with a beam of energy shooting up out of it. There's like that depressurization point up here in the top. I'm just going to draw it out there real quick. Remember, there's that Dalet above right here. So there's the firmament and there's the door. This inverted dome, or this Dalet at the top of the world, is a strong magnetic current. And plasma is repelled by a strong magnetic current. So what you would see is this beanstalk or this column grow up or shoot up out of this plasma volcano. And then when it gets to the top, it would look like it was splitting off to the sides, conforming to this shape right here. This Dalet at the top, this opening, this is more of a side perspective. In reality, most people would see some sort of circle up there in the sky, the all-seeing eye, right? And then this would split off like that. And this is the breath of God. This is the zephyr of the world. This is the wind that shoots up, the earth breathing, basically. It's Mother Earth breathing. So that's what the letter He is. Originally, it was a picture of a person going like this. This is also the Atlas pose, as some people would say. It looks like somebody was holding up another world above ours, or the sky itself. They would hold it up. And this is also a symbol for peace. So this is why when you don't want problems or whatever, like you hold your hands straight up like this, right? Instead of holding them out to say, hey, look, I don't have any weapons. That's not what that is. It comes from holding your hands straight up, which means peace. Letter E, right? Now you turn this sideways basically because over time they would just draw like that, right? Over time it would be like this. This is like the psi symbol also over time. And then they wouldn't just draw like the top. They would just be like that. Like that, and then this kind of changed over time, and then we get the letter E basically, right? Now that's a quick evolution of a particular glyph. So we've covered the first four letters, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, and He, which is that breath sound. So let's talk about Vav. Here we have a proto-Sinaitic version of it. Right after He, we've got Vav right there, which looks like a column with a hole right at the top. Interesting, because it shares that with the stick figure man over here, the squatter man. But over here we've got Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, He, Vav. There's that Y, there's that flux capacitor. So it means the picture of it was a nail, or the picture of it was a hook. Okay? At least that's how people interpreted it. But originally it was this right here, which was the arms of the squatter man, the arms that we showed you earlier in that He, and then the beam. Okay, so originally it was this right here, or when you carve it out into rock, it would have more hard angles and it would look like a Y. It's not the letter Y, however, okay, it's not our modern letter Y. It was seen as being a tent peg. So if you've ever gone camping and you need to secure your tent to the ground, you would take your string from your tent or your rope or whatever with your tent peg, and then you would hammer that into the ground. So this letter right here, Vav, represented a connector, and in modern Hebrew that's what it is. It's literally the word and, so it connects one thing and another thing. So this is the Vav. It is the connector basically, right? This was the connector, the great connector you could say, and it is equivalent to the number 6. You could look at them as like cross beams. If they go up and then they hit the dome, right? Then you could have 3 of them, right? And then of course you could like make a cross beam if you're drawing quicker or whatever. And this would be like in the middle, you would have Jesus, and then you would have the anode and the cathode on either side, right, of the world. And those are those 3 cruciforms or crucifixes that are often depicted together with one another. It looks kind of like this in modern Hebrew. So modern Hebrew is more like calligraphy drawing of a hook, you could say, right? And then this is sort of like on the Monster cans. They have like those 3 sort of like claw marks or whatever it is on the Monster energy drink. That's also the Vavs, or the triple Vav, you could say. A, B, C, D, E, F. Okay, cool. That's what I want to talk about. So V or Vav, the hook, also dependent upon the dialect, was pronounced V. Some cultures could not do the hard V sound. They would go O or oo, oo, w, ooh, or it was a really long oo, which was a double oo, which gives us W, which is the exact same letter as the Vav, which is why they don't have a W in the ancient languages, because it was just a longer oo sound. Look at this, V, V. Now, if you say that quick and fast over time, eventually the dialect is going to change this V into the letter F, which is why it's in the spot where the F would be. A, B, C, D, E, F. The word El meant God, or it meant mighty ruler or mighty leader, basically. But when they had children, they would say those who are attached to the mighty leaders, or they would call them the Elu, which meant of, because this is a connector, right? It's a hook, of the mighty leaders. Now the Elu turned into, of course, the Ilva, or the Elven race, the Elven. Or if we just use the singular, we would have the elf, right? The Alpha, or the Alpha, etc., right? So this is where elves actually come from. All you really need to take away from the Vav is that it is a connector, and usually it connects something terrestrial to something celestial, originally. Let's move on to Zayin. This one over here looks sort of like an italic letter, capital I, almost. But this is the one we're looking at. See how it sort of looks like a capital letter I right there? But look at, if we go further back in time to this one right here, you can see that that top portion of the capital letter I curves downward. Ah, this is interesting. That curve of the top portion of that I, which is not an I, it's closer to the letter Z, basically. That's a clue as to what this is a word picture of. Food, cut, nourish. This is interesting. Let's look at some other examples of it. So let's find Zayin. Here it is over here. You can see that top portion curves downward again. Ah, plow. You see that? Plow, weapon sometimes, and then cut off. These people would hold onto the handles and they would plow. Which is why this top portion is like curved downward, right? It would plow the earth. It would divide the earth. It would cut the earth. And the whole point of it was to create a space in the dirt so you can plant your seeds, basically. Which is why if we look at all of these different descriptors of Zayin, the plow is associated with food, and it meant to cut, or to cut the ground specifically. It can also mean nourishment. It's Z, just like that. Almost like an S, but like the hard Z sound, right? Almost like you're trying to do like a fly buzzing. Zzz. Let's move on to this next one over here. So we've got Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, He, Vav, Zayin, and then Het. Het. You see this one that looks sort of like a ladder? That's the letter Het. It's a hard guttural. They call that a guttural sound whenever you cause the back of your throat to sort of close up and then you breathe through it. That's a guttural. Het. Some people couldn't do that though, right? So with accents and dialects over time, it was just Het or Het. Or some people couldn't do Het, and they would try to force people by writing a C in front of it. So to go k-ha, het, het. And it turned into Chet. That did not exist. They added that C to try to force, just like a vowel. Other letters were added to try to force a person to be able to pronounce it the original way that it was pronounced, which is Het, with the H, a hard H. Try to get them to pronounce that C sound, or that G, that G, get, which is also why you have G and H together so often in the English language. And let's look at a picture of it real quick. So it looks over here almost like a ladder, right? So I'm going to draw that out right here. We'll do like sort of a ladder. It's got these side beams and then 3 cross beams in the middle. Okay, this is a crude drawing. Now it looks like an 8, which is appropriate because if we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Het is the 8th letter of the Phoenician alphabet. Let's look for the Het. Now over here you can see that that ladder is sideways originally. So let's draw it the original way that it was drawn, right? So we've got a top section, or you could say a roof, and then we've got a floor section on the bottom with 3 beams going straight down. It looks just like the Roman numeral 3, basically. That is the original form for the Het. Now remember, these letters can turn over time, as they have up here in these above examples, but originally it was represented by a ceiling on the top, up here, a ground on the bottom, and 3 beams shooting up out of it, right? Now, this is my interpretation. This is the sky up here. This is the ground down here. And this is the beam that shoots up out of Mount Meru in the middle, as we talked about earlier. And this is the anode and the cathodes. Now, if you look here, you can see the Het right there, the sideways ladder with the 3 beams. And it means, or it meant, it was a picture that conveyed a wall, something that is outside, something that acts as a divider, something that acts as a fence, something that is a tent wall or a separator inside of a tent. At the middle of the world, if you did have Mount Meru or Rupus Nigra, right, in the middle, and it shoots up its very own beam. I'm just using the color orange just for simplicity. It shoots its beam up to the sky, and then you have these lesser ones off to the side acting as anode and cathode. They would shoot their beams up to the sky, and you would have 3 of them at the center of the world. If you did, in fact, have an anode, a cathode, and a neutral point, which is Mount Meru itself. They would reach up and they would touch the heavens, right? And then this would be representative by the ground itself. These are outdoor boundary markers. They were known as being outdoor walls, the walls of the earth, the pillars of Hercules. Hercules is the guy who holds up the sky, basically. He's the Atlas symbol, right, with the depressurization point there in the middle. This was Hercules. This was Atlas. This is the squatter man symbol that you see written on so many different petroglyphs, etc. And then on either side, he would look like he was holding up 2 staffs, or sometimes these were interpreted as animals, or these were columns. And this turned into the story in the Bible in the Old Testament of Hercules. Was it Hercules? No, Samson. This is Samson. Sorry. Totally different name. But Samson, who pushed and broke the pillars of the house, which is the world, symbolically speaking. And when these pillars came crumbling down, the roof fell down, or the sky collapsed, or the sky broke apart, etc. Right? Anyways, those are the pillars of Hercules. They're known as the boundaries of the world, but it's the letter 8, and that's where the letter 8 comes from, and it means a boundary. So, for example, if you draw 2 of these together right next to each other, we get the number 88, which esoterically, like in the movies and stuff like that, right? 88 implies time travel, or it implies somebody who travels from one realm to another, or from one world to another, or from one reality to another. People who can transcend boundaries of this realm that we live in now. They're time travelers, basically, or they're seen as time travelers, or a type of time travel. But what this really is a boundary and a boundary, or pillars of Hercules. They were explorers. They were people who pushed boundaries. They were people who transcended boundaries. They were people who went from one realm to another realm. They were the people who were able to cross over or go between the pillars of Hercules in order to get to a brave new world. This is what I like to call the X-Men symbol, because that's basically the X-Men symbol, right? A circle with an X right in the middle. Or you could say X marks the spot. So this right here, the outer circle meant a container of some sort. It meant a basket, something that holds other things, specifically a food basket, specifically a basket that held something that was nourishing or food. And it also can imply to surround, because that circle is the surrounding factor. To contain, it can also mean mud and clay. It conveyed things like nourishment, food, basket, but also strange things, or container, right? Specifically food container, but it also meant snake, that mysterious island mass that was drawn and depicted on many, many ancient maps. It is a circle, and it is crossed by 4 rivers. This was the area that was known as the basket of the world, or the cradle of civilization, or more accurately, the crater of civilization, because it's a valley, as you can see. It's a bowl. It's sort of a bowl shape, or a plate. Plate is probably a better description for it, but you could say bowl as well, because it has this high and lofty rim all the way around the outside. All of these mountain ranges surround the outside portion of this inner central land on this map. And I believe that that's because of electricity. This is the circle image, which meant a basket, a bread basket, a crater, a grail, a container of life, something that held life in it. Why? Because this is the area where life, people experienced life in abundance because of that beam of energy that shot up from Mount Meru right here, right? And it goes up and it creates this sort of electrical dome around this island. Which might help to explain where all these mountains came from, because electricity has the ability, especially a strong electrical current, can pull land up. It can pull mud up, it can pull sand up into the air, and then petrify it and change the chemical bonds. And this was the cradle of life. This was the grail that held this stick figure in the middle that was seen as dying on a cross, or Odin on a tree, etc. This is that grail. This is the X that marks the spot. All right, cool. So let's move on. We're talking about the Phoenician alphabet. Here's a variant of it. Here's a version of it. This is the letter I in the modern language. So I, me, personifying something and making it personal to you, individual, representing you or yourself, the letter I, okay? This is not the picture of an eye, which is this one down here, but this is an image of a hand, or more specifically an arm. The upper arm portion right here, you can see, is up here, goes down to the elbow, and then it splits off at the end, a hand. This is a rudimentary arm, basically. Look down here next to me, next to my arm, you can see it says arm and a closed hand, work, throw, or to throw, to move. Basically, I'm interpreting this as action, arm and hand, works or deeds. So this is the works or the deeds that people do. And then over here, we've got the arm version of it. And it basically implies work or deeds or actions or things that are done by an individual who the arm is connected to, right? So our actions prove what we are on the inside, which is a secret that nobody can see. But our actions betray that secret, which is why we use the letter I, which is actions, for ourselves, for us. For these are our actions. This is me. This is who I am, right? So our actions is I, basically. All right, cool. So that's the letter I, or you could say Yod in the old language. And then this one looks like a smiley face. That one's the hand. That's actually just a hand. It's a picture of like a hand. You know, sometimes it had a thumb, sometimes not a thumb or whatever, but that's supposed to be an open hand. Qof, or this is the letter K. Okay? So this it was easier to do to just draw and then like that, some straight lines. Let's see if we can get some context for the meaning. It says open palm, bend, open, allow. So these are all the things that are implied by an open hand. So it's all the things that can be implied by a picture of an open hand, like giving things or gifting things to somebody, or a present, or presenting things, even to show. Kaf. And then lamed. Ooh, so this is the one I did earlier. Remember whenever I showed you the origin of the meaning of the word elf, or ilu, or elva, right? This is the L. And as you can see here, it looks like an italics form of the letter L. Up here, you can see it kind of looks like a question mark. It was a staff that had a hook on it, actually. And they would use it to like grab the sheep if they had collars or whatever, or to put it around their neck, to sort of gently guide them in the right direction. And this is where we get the meaning for this glyph. Originally, this glyph, which was sort of this shepherd's hook or question mark or whatever, was designed to lead the sheep, like a cane. But like I said, we went through these polarity shifts and people just started seeing things upside down, started writing things slanted, started writing things in different ways. This hook, this staff, I should say, became upside down, and that gave rise to the letter L. So the L, or lamed means teaching and guidance and leadership and stuff like that. And here it is over here, right? There it is right there, an upside down, sort of slanted shepherd's staff. That's what that is. Cool. Next up is the letter M in the modern language. It's just a scribbly line. It looks just like the letter M. Basically, it's very close to that. And this down here is really interesting because it has sort of like a W on the top with a line that goes down. I'm going to explain this to you too. Our capital letter M, I will say, was this shape. If you were to draw the top of a water or the top of the ocean and you would draw out little waves kind of like this, this is where this comes from. It actually meant originally to come up out of the waters. They would draw a line way down beneath the waters and they would make it go up. Sometimes this glyph is drawn like this. The water top, this is the top of the ocean or whatever, and then they would draw a line down like that. What this actually was something coming up out of the water. To come up out of the water as in to be born, which is why mother or mom, etc., mem, all of that. Mom is basically mem, right? That vowel in the middle is just a forced vowel, but it means something that life that comes up out of the waters, right? The waters are chaotic and then life comes up out of the waters and emerges. In. So here's in. This one's really interesting. It's nun. The way that we would write that in English is like this. None. Which is very interesting. This is a really enigmatic, mysterious word. None. Or it's actually noon because of the pronunciation of the vav. Originally was u, right? So noon. Originally had a little circle and then like a squiggly tail that came off of it. Okay, so the portion they took was the end of the squiggly tail and that turned into the letter N. I see this as a ball of plasma. So this is plasma or ball lightning basically, and it leaves a trail coming off of it, right? I know, I mean, there's reasons why it looks like other things too, because it's all fractal and everything grows out of those types of spiritual, invisible qualities or light basically. So that's why it looks like that. And this symbol means life. So here we have, what is it? Mem is the water top, M, right? And then here it looks like a snake. This is very much what it looks like in the Egyptian hieroglyphs as well. It looks just like a snake or whatever, because it's plasma. In my opinion, this is how I interpret that, is it is a squiggly line of plasma, which is life, basically, or moving spirit, which moves through the air like that. Life, seed, etc., right? So you can see that it springs forth life. It brings forth, this image right here brings forth life, basically, right? And it is the letter nun. Now, this letter, the letter in, or the letter nun, is equal to, boom, boom, the number 50. Very interesting stuff. So if you, for example, if you read in the Bible, in the Old Testament, there was a character who was a type of Jesus or a foreshadowing of Jesus in the Bible. His name was Joshua, which is pretty much the same name as Jesus. It's just pronounced differently. And Joshua was called the son of Nun, or the son of none. Not the son of none, as in nobody, which is funny, but the son of none, or the son of 50. If I were to draw one of the Anunnaki, let me just try to draw one here. These caps had horns on each side. So if they had a pair of horns like that, that would represent the number 10. Basically, he was the son of somebody who had a hat that had 50 or 5 rows of horns, which is very interesting. That gets into a whole nother teaching, so I don't want to get too far off topic. Mem, Nun, Samek. Now, take a look at Samek. Just it looks like a column that has these lines that come out of it, like a triple T. And it says, a hand on staff, support, prop. I like this one the best so far, this support and the prop, okay? But they're like instabilities that come off of the beam, basically. So it's a type of column, and it's a type of pillar, an electrical pillar. This is very much like the Jed in Egyptian, right? The Jed is like a 3D version of this, basically. If I was to try to draw the Jed, and the Jed sort of had like these little antennas, and this is exactly what it looks like. If you go out and you look at the roads and you drive next to the roads, you see electricity and power lines, and usually they have like little lines coming off of here. That's what the Jed pillar basically is a type of that, a forerunner of that, and it means power, it means support, it means strength, it means something that is supportive. This is what you would also erect physically. If this was made out of wood, you would hang plants. Mim, Nun, Samek, Ayin. Ayin is how this one is pronounced. Let's check out Ayin. If we go up here to the top, we can see Mem, Lamed, Mim, Nun, Samek, Ayin looks like an eye. It is an eye. Ayin was originally one eyeball, and it meant an eye, or by extension, to watch, to know things, because you take things into your eyes. It means an eye, it means to see, it means to experience things in the world, etc., right? And that is the letter Ayin. And originally it was like an oval type shape with a dot in the middle. This is also, if we draw the circular, the sun glyph, right? With a dot in the middle. This is the glyph for the sun. The all-seeing eye is that depressurization point up there in the sky. If you were directly underneath that depressurization point in the dome, as I mentioned earlier, you would see a perfect circle, just like this. And then you would see a smaller circle inside of that, because that's an upside. I'm drawing a two-dimensional version of it. Keep that in mind. If you're directly underneath it looking straight up. So you would see this outer circle is that inverted dome, or the door, or the dalet, right? This is the opening when it does open, actually, which would be a dot. If you were to not be directly underneath it, like as in this example, but you were way further south, then this circle would turn more oval in shape. And it would look more like this, or like a traditional eye type of a shape, like a sort of almond type of a shape to it with the dot in the middle, right? So that is the eye, and it means to see, to watch, to know, etc. So those who come from the eye were also known as the watchers, etc., right? Samek, Ayin, Pe. Pe is next, but it's a mouth. And this is also why the word phone and phonetics and phonics and all those types of things, Phoenix, this is why they start with this particular group of letters, which is really strange. It starts with a P, but it's pronounced as an F. And that's why it's related to the mouth, or something that comes out of an opening, just like this would be the top of the plasma volcano of Mount Meru, or Rupus Nigra. This is the mouth of the world, where the zephyr, comes up out, or the breath of God comes out, etc. Sade, or Tzadi. There's different ways to pronounce this based on different dialects and accents, okay? Sade is pronounced just like the double Z in pizza. I'm just writing it phonetically, but pizza, right? Pizza. That's sort of how we pronounce that. This T and the Z right next to each other, z, or if you want to include the A, za, right? This is exactly how that letter Zade or Zadi is pronounced, and it was drawn. Let me show you how it was drawn. There's different ways to draw this, but usually people would draw a long line and then like a squiggly line coming off the side, or they would draw a long line and like a little line coming off, and it actually looks like it makes a T and a Z. That's how you can remember that, is it makes a za, like there's little tassels that Jewish people wear on the side of their prayer shawls, and they tie knots in them, and those are called tzitzits. And that starts with this particular letter. It's TZ, z, or the tzitzit fly. You know the tzitzit fly? Same exact pronunciation. T and then Z. You look up Zadeh. Oh, here you can see the oldest form of it. Let me take this off. So aside from these hieroglyphic angular drawings of it, they would draw like a picture of a person's head, their back, and then their knees going up and their leg going down. So what this was supposed to be, if I was to add like the arms, right? This is like a person lying down. Okay? So that's what that's supposed to be originally, and it meant side, which is kind of how the letter is pronounced. Sade. Sade, or T-Z-A-D-E, meant side, essentially, or it conveyed things like to be on the side of, which is why originally the glyph had a long line and then another line coming off the side. Like this is the main path right here, and this is a side path right here. Sade, or Sade, which is side, and then Qof. Now, Qof is cool. I really like Qof. So here's the Q right here, right? So you can see how they drew this connection from the Qof, which is right up here, right? It goes down, and then it scooches over because they kept on adding more and more letters in the alphabets. But this turned into Q. I'm going to explain to you what this originally was. As you can see here, this was the original glyph for it. This one right here with this little circle and a big line going all the way through it. So originally it was a circle like this with a line that was very long going all the way through it. This was the original letter Q. Here it is. So you can see it kind of looks like Saturn, basically. Like if this was a planet, it would be Saturn, okay? And there's a good reason for that, right? So this also means this symbol meant like an opening. And I believe this is a picture, basically, of like a cave or something, and it's a split. Basically, this means to split. Okay, so that's why you have like a circle or an object or whatever, and it's split in half. Or the division sign is like a, you know, another version of like the Qof or whatever like that. But it means to split. It means to divide. And actually, originally, I believe it meant an opening. This is directly related to an Egyptian glyph that meant a female body part, okay? Like, you know, the body part that makes babies, basically, right? It was an opening and a line like that, and it meant a split. It meant an opening in something, and it's directly related to words like cave. Resh and Aleph are the two easiest ones to guess what they are. Aleph looks just like the head of an ox. Resh looks just like the head of a man or a woman, a person, a human, right? So Resh, if we look it up originally, it is equivalent to, you could see it was a profile of a human's head, right? And then after a while, they just drew like the neck and then like the top of the head. Or you could also say Rosh, right? So because of the vowels are pronounced in different ways. Rosh means head. And by extension, the top of something. Rosh, right? The land at the top is Russia, and that's what that implies. Rush or Rosh meant the head, the top, the head of a man, the first thing, right? The top thing. All right. So Qof, Rish, Sheen. So just like your shin, which is between your knee and your ankle, that's kind of how that's pronounced. Sheen is the next letter, or Charlie Sheen, you could say, and it means two front teeth. So these are like buck teeth, basically, like the very front two teeth, just like that, right? And then jagged, when they're carving it as a hieroglyph, looks like a W, or pointy teeth, or like vampire teeth or something like that, right? Let's see some more examples. Sheen, over here, it's very carved out. It's hard to make like rounded teeth when you're carving and stuff like that. So it would look like this, basically, like buck teeth or horse teeth or something. And it means to eat, to consume, by extension to destroy. Okay, so this sort of is the letter Sheen is typical of having a negative connotation because of what it implies, which is the teeth are there to crush, to destroy, to break down things, right? And that's what it means, basically, or that's what it implies. And this one is more of a sh sound. It could be pronounced S, but that's more Samek. Remember that one Samek that looks like the power grid or the power line? And it means everything that your teeth imply. To bite, to gnaw, to latch on to something, to eat, to consume, to take in, etc., right? This one's more squiggly, like a molar or something like that, like your back tooth, right? So it doesn't really matter if it's pointy or if it's squiggly, it still means tooth. Now we come to the last one. In Hebrew, it is tav. It is just a cross, a cruciform, an X standing up. Okay, so let's take a look at some examples here. If we go all the way back, you can see it's a cross, it's a cruciform. It's the exact same as the tet, but without the circle around it. And you can see it's boom right there. It marks the spot, right? So you can see it says crossed sticks, like a crucifix, a mark, a sign, a monument, something that represents anything, basically, a marker. If we go over here, it's the same in Phoenician and Hieratic. If it was the tet, it would be like that, right? But without that circle, it means a marker. And it is, I mean, you could make it as an X. This is where the letter X basically came from. And this is why people sign their name or put their mark. You know how they say like sign on the dotted line? They'll have an X right here. They didn't used to put an X right there. That was to tell people this is where you make your mark. So whenever people signed their name, the people that didn't spell, the people that couldn't spell, they would just put a mark. They would put, I mark this. You know what I mean? So they would say, leave a mark right here. And they would put an actual marker. Basically, it's the 4 rivers in the Garden of Eden. Okay? And right in the middle is the plasma volcano. Right in the middle is, you know, where life comes out of. And this is why they put X's on maps and stuff as markers for buried treasure and stuff like that. And that is the Tav, or the Tau, you could say. And that is our presentation of Phoenician. Let's go ahead and recap. We've got Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, He, Vav, Zayin, Het, Tet, Yod, Kaf, Lamed, Mim, or Mim, Nun, Samek, Ayin, Pe, Sade, Qof, Rish, Sheen, Tau. Those are the 22 original letters of, at the very least, the Phoenician, some people would say Paleo-Hebrew, alphabet, or Aleph Bet. That's a good question. Where does the word phonics come from, right? It comes from Phoenicians, or the people who came from the Phoenix. And the Phoenix was, the Phoenix is what comes out of Mount Meru. So if you have like Rupus Nigra, the high and lofty tower or whatever, right? Let me take this down. And then you have this beam of energy that shoots up and then it spreads its wings like that, right? Or the Vav in the sky, like we talked about, or Jesus hanging on the cross, or Odin, or whatever, right? Eventually, this is actually going to turn into aurora, and it's going to turn into like feathers, basically, or it's going to look like feathers, right? As it's no longer a beam, but it mixes with the fluid, which we call atmosphere, and this becomes the Thunderbird. Let me put the depressurization point in there. This is the Thunderbird, this is the Phoenix, and then you would have plasma leaking out in whatever direction the wind is blowing, which would be a beak. And this is the Phoenix, this is the Thunderbird, and this is why the people who come from this area are called Phoenicians. They come from the land of the Phoenix.
Who are you in this vast multitudes? Powers collide. Who are you in this vast multitude?